Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Discipleship in the Marketplace. Excited to be here with you for another great conversation with my friend Jeremy McCommons. If you are from the Ordinary Movement, this guy is no stranger to the camera, no stranger to the podcast. But if you are new here, hello, and you are going to absolutely love hearing from Jeremy. Not only has he co-founded a nationwide, really a worldwide movement in discipleship, but he's also a serial entrepreneur. And I'm going to, Jeremy, let you take it away and share with the audience a little bit of your background, not just in ministry, but in business.
Yeah. Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me on. I think I am a stranger to video, though. I do it because I feel like God called me to have a podcast, but otherwise, I don't know that I feel very comfortable, as you know, because you're always asking me for things and I ghost you, but I apologize for that.
Yep. We're trying to get you on more, Jeremy. The people need to hear from you.
I don't think they want to. So I'll take the ministry hat off, which is kind of impossible for me to do because is what we're going to talk about today. Ministry and business, I think, blend together in every aspect of my life and should in every Christian's life, I believe. And but I'll put on the business hat more than the ministry hat. How about that? And so
let's do it.
Started out as a school teacher many moons ago and did that for 2 years, got into real estate, and I just really flourished in that environment. So real estate sales and then into real estate investing, started flipping houses when the market crashed in like 2000, probably 2007, I think is when we really started. My business partner, Mark Doherty. What's up, Mark? Hopefully he'll listen. We were hoping to do 20 houses, flip 20 houses the first year. We did 80. The next year we were like, man, if we could do 80 houses again, that'd be amazing. I think we did like 200. And so we, for a period of time, we were flipping like 220 houses a year. That means, we were buying 220 houses and then we had to fix up and sell 200. So we were doing like 450 transactions, give or take. Yeah. And we did it with like one assistant and a bunch of contractors. And so I don't know how we did it to this day. I don't know how we did it. By the grace of God, his hand was all over our business, all over our success. And certainly a lot of hard work. But I say often that a lot of people work really hard and don't find the success we did. So all glory to God. So anyhow, went from that to building homes, some land development, buying commercial real estate. Our first commercial project was a defunct a Borders bookstore that went out of business. And
cool. I remember those.
Bankruptcy. Yeah. Well, you know it now because it's in Central Park where you live. Not where I live. I live in Colorado now. I used to live in Fredericksburg, Virginia, but it's now the Barnes & Noble building. So in Central Park. So that was our first commercial project. Bought that at a foreclosure auction or a bankruptcy sale. And pretty scary thing to do, but we did it and it worked out. So bought some other commercials since then. And I'm a cash flow junkie. I believe cash flow is the key to freedom. I think that the more passive income that you have, the more freedom you have, and then that allows us to do what God calls us to do, right? And so I think all Christians, if we can, should build passive income streams so that we have more margin in our lives to do what God calls us to do. But that kind of brings me to where I am today, and I'm still a junkie in investing. I'm always looking for opportunities, and so that's where I'm at.
So for someone who is thinking like, that sounds great, I want to be someone who has passive income so I can give more, live in that freedom. I mean, what type of advice do you give people?
Well, first, you really have to educate yourself. A lot of people think it just happens because you work hard or you, I don't know, just get lucky, but it's really not. It's a ton of education. It's a ton of, there's a great quote I like. It's actually in one of our Ordinary Movement books because I think it has to do with our faith as well. But it says, the quote, I don't know who the quote is from, but it says, a formal education will make you a living. A self-education will make you a fortune. And many of us get our formal educations from the university schools, whatever we do, could be trades. Maybe you're an HVAC tech, whatever that would be, right? So a formal education, but a self-education is what makes you a fortune. So I read book after book after book. I went to seminar. I spent a lot of money on going to seminars to educate myself. And so that self-education was what really took it to the next level. It's also a mindset. You have to, you really have to, you have to set goals. You have to set out to make everything in your life about accomplishing that goal of passive income. And the reason I say that is passive income requires a ton of self-denial. In order, I always say, if you want to have great passive income, then you have to delay gratification. You have to be really good at delaying gratification. So when everybody else is going on vacation, you're buying a rental house. When everyone else is buying a new truck, you're driving the old truck. Right. Because that down payment for that next rental, I'm going to use rental houses because that's something that everyone can relate to. There's a million different ways to make passive income streams, right? But then it's another house I can buy. So then, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, unbelievable book. That's a book that I would recommend to anyone. I've had some believers, and I would just tell them to get over themselves, but I've had some believers say, well, that's not very biblical. Like, it's all about money. Well, I'm like, yeah, but like the people that are actually, that are focused on creating passive income have margin in their lives to do what God calls them to do. Right. And so it's really, you got to eat the meat, spit out the bones. That's one of our cultural values in Ordinary Movement. You can see a lot of what I did in business, I brought with me into ministry.
Right.
And so it's like that book is a great book to create a mindset around how to create passive income. But it takes a ton of delayed gratification. And nobody wants to hear that. Like everybody sees, I'm going to talk in a way that I normally don't. It's going to sound a little lack of humility and pompous. Please understand, I'm just trying to talk in a way that is straightforard.
Oh, bring it on. I got popcorn cooking. Let's do
it. But people would look at my life and say, oh man, it must be nice, right? Oh, it must be nice. He has that passive income. Well, when they were driving new cars, I wasn't. When they were having this or that, I was. I mean, I went 18 months without a single paycheck. I was living literally on savings and doing everything I could to put every dollar I could back into the business so that I could create this dream. So that I keep talking about that, but that is so important if you want to create passive income streams.
How do you reconcile that though, when you have believers, or maybe just a mindset, not just believers, just this mindset of it's all about money, it's all about hustling, it's all about grinding. And then, but aren't we supposed to, I mean, is that the way to be? Is that the way to, aren't we supposed to take on the yoke of Christ, which is, it's not heavy burdens, and it is, what about Sabbath? What about rest? What about, making sure that we have enough margin in our life to see people and to minister to them? Like, can you do both? Can it be both and?
Oh, yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, you can and you should. And people that say that are just not understanding very well. Right. So just because I was working hard didn't mean that my business partner and I weren't focused on Christ. It doesn't mean that our business wasn't focused on pointing people to Jesus. It doesn't mean that I wasn't giving. And I want to talk a little about that here in a minute. It wasn't that I wasn't giving. It wasn't that. So you mentioned Sabbath. That's interesting because we did not talk at all about this. I actually have a deep conviction around the Sabbath. I do not believe that we are required to keep the Sabbath in the new covenant. Okay. I'll say that. Okay. But Jesus does say in the new covenant that the Sabbath is not for God, it's for man. Right? That's Jesus's words. I don't think it's something that we're not under the law. I get it. But he gave it to man for a reason. And he found it so important in the Old Testament for a reason, right? And it's because rest is so important. But beyond that, the Sabbath, and this is going to sting some people, and that's okay, because I'm just talking about myself. If it stings you, then that's between you and the Lord. But it requires you to say, I'm willing to do in 6 days what other people can do in 7 and trust you with that other, right? So that's one thing. It requires a level of trust in your finances as much as giving does, right? Right. But it also postures you before the Lord to say, hey, I need to take a time of rest. I need recharging, and I need to spend time with you, this time with the Lord. And all throughout the Old Testament, the Sabbath is so important. Even the land, like he even calls the land to be in Sabbath every 7 years, right? Yeah. And if you look, very interesting, the Israelites did not take Sabbath for, I think, I'm going to mess this up. I'm on the spot, but I'm a business guy.
Yeah, I got it. There's grace. Yeah,
give me a break. But if you look at the Babylonian captivity, I think it was 50 years. Mm-hmm. And they were supposed to take a Sabbath year. They skipped 50. I believe they skipped 50 Sabbath years. Look it up. But I'm certain that the number of years in captivity related to the number of skipped Sabbath mm-hmm. years, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So God got it back either way. He said the Israelites went into captivity. That was in the same amount of time that they would have had Sabbath. So all throughout the Old Testament, the Sabbath is so important. So I always practice the Sabbath. In fact, my business partner and I agreed that we would practice Sabbath, even when we were doing all that crazy work. And I remember we bought a car wash once at another bankruptcy sale, and we don't know anything about car washes, but we were trying to operate it. And we made an agreement that we would not run that car wash on Sundays, which is really hard to do because in the car wash industry, Saturdays and Sundays are your big days.
Yeah. And
so we knew we were playing with fire in the world's eyes.
Right.
But we felt very strongly that that's what the God called us to do. And then from that, we had somebody come in, which is a friend of ours, Chris, what's up? And he did very well with that car wash. It allowed us to lease it. And then we didn't have to feel that burden of having it open or not on Sundays because we weren't the business operators. We were leasing the business.
Right.
But that deal worked out, I believe. And everything worked out so well with that car wash because we took the right stance from the beginning and we walked out what God put on our heart.
Right.
And so I would just say to anybody listening, if you're a real estate salesperson, take a Sabbath. Like it doesn't have to be Sunday per se. Let's say it's a Wednesday. Make it whatever day you feel like God has put on your heart. Don't do what I'm saying. Do whatever God says.
Sure.
But if you feel like it's okay with you and God to do it on a Tuesday, but you need to have a Sabbath in your life, and I would say it should be Sunday, only because that's what we practice in our culture today, and it's when our families go to church. And it's all those things. And I think it's really important to walk that out for our children as well. I mean, that's I went on and on.
Absolutely. It's all good. It's all good. That's going to make everyone go read their Bible now. Like, what is he talking about? I need to go figure that out. So that's good. You've left some nuggets for us to follow there, a trail. So how did you make the leap then from being in business, flipping houses? What was the leap to now starting Ordinary Movement? Because that's a huge undertaking as well. I guess a couple questions. How do you have time to do it all? Running two major organizations or, running your major business, running this organization. But what was the leap that you took there?
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to your original question of like, what do you say to somebody that says that's not godly, it's unbiblical, you're chasing money, you're chasing dollars. And I think that's hogwash. I think that it can be, but I think I was in tune with the Lord the entire time. I'm not saying I was perfect, and I'm not saying that I didn't get it wrong at times. I'm not saying there weren't times he had to correct me, right? He corrected me recently, and I had to lay some things down for him, make some sacrifices, provide more time for him because I was putting something else on a pedestal in my life and putting too much focus and attention to that and not the Lord. And he made me aware of it.
Yeah,
he's done that in business as well, or in the pursuit of money. But they can coexist. The Lord was always on my heart. It was a constant struggle, a constant in the Word, reading about what does God say about money, meeting with Christian businessmen that would help put safeguards in my life, that would give me practical advice on how to keep money at bay and not the thing that I love the most. One practical advice that I was given was, the day that making money is more fun to you than giving money away means that your heart is wrong. So go give. And so anytime I felt that, I would always make a big gift, and it would always change my posture around money. Right. So little things like that. Yep. And then I always felt like from the very beginning, and this is where we have to be really careful as business people or in the pursuit of money, is we have to realize that, God may allow us to do that for a period of time. He may call us to do that for the rest of our lives. Right. But we also have to have the posture to know that he may direct us in a different way at some point as well. And so I always felt something inside of me, and I said this verbally to people, that he was going to give me the opportunity to gain wealth, but he was going to call me to something additional after that my wealth would help support. And so I felt that early on. When I was a school teacher, I felt that. It was really weird. I had a conversation with a very wealthy man. He must have thought I was on drugs. He's like, you're making $28,000 a year and you're talking about being wealthy. But it just, God put it in me, right? And so I prayed for many years what that looked like and how to do that. And then I would just say, and for years I was frustrated because I felt like I was to that point, but God didn't give me that, what to do.
Right.
And that was because I hadn't learned to be intimate with him. I hadn't learned to have a relationship with him. I hadn't learned to draw so close to him that the things I was doing for him were from calling and not out of obligation or out of trying to earn. So God had to change my posture from me doing things to earn his approval, right? That's what I was doing. I was doing things to earn his approval. He had to change my posture to instead be, I'm not going to do this to try to earn your approval. I'm going to do this because you're calling me to do it, right? So he put purpose and passion into my heart around this thing called discipleship and ordinary movement, and that's where that was birthed. I will say, it's really, this is where passive income. Okay, so you said how could you do it? Let's get practical. That was the spiritual side. The practical side. How do you do that, right? Like if you want to transition, well, you can't do it if all your income is earned income.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you create, when you create a business, you either create a passive income stream or you create a job for yourself. Right now, it could start as a job and then you could morph into a passive income stream.
Right.
But a lot of people will start as a job. It always starts as a job, right? You're always in it, especially in the beginning. Yep. But a lot of people will not have the mindset, how do I replace myself? How do I replicate myself? How do I create this to be a passive income stream versus a trading hours for dollars operation?
Right.
And you can make a ton of money trading hours for dollars. You can make a ton of money being a micromanager, being in the day-to-day, like rolling, right? The problem with it is if God does put something on your heart, now you have to shift in that moment to then create a replacement for yourself and pass it. And that could take a decade, literally. I mean, it could take literally a decade. So I started with that mindset. So everything we did, we wanted to create a system and a process of how to replace myself or replace Mark, right? My business partner. How do we do this in a way that creates passive income streams? And I always said I always looked at ways to take myself out of earned income businesses and put someone in that would allow it to be passive. And so that was always my goal. So it was really quite an easy transition because I was at the point for years before, because I said I was searching for what God had for me. Right. But it was years of that my passive income exceeded my monthly spend. So once my passive income exceeded my monthly spend, it gave me the freedom to make the decisions that God had put on my heart. And so that's why I think it's so important if we can, as believers, to do that, if we can. I understand not everybody is not called the same as me, but I'm talking to business people right now, more or less.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a good question. Do you believe that everyone is meant to have passive income or meant to be, you have the prosperity gospel or, people who are just believing that believers should have all the things. Do you believe that's true? Do you believe that God has a desire to make every believer wealthy or be able to do what you've done? No,
I think I'm extremely blessed and fortunate. And I believe I'm not a prosperity gospel guy, which is funny because it sounds like it as I'm talking. I am not. I'm repulsed by it. Right. I do think that God desires that we all, the Old Testament, one of the signs of wisdom is wealth in the Old Testament. The Old Testament, to be a prophet, you had to have wealth. Moses was extremely wealthy, it says. That's a proverb where it says the sign of wisdom is wealth, by the way. It's in Proverbs. So I do think God wants us to be wealthy. I think he wants us. I got to be really careful how I'm saying this because I know I think God wants us to prosper. I think God wants us. I think he does. I don't think it's a sign of his love for us, and I don't think it's a sign that someone is walking the right path versus somebody's not.
Right.
I mean, all throughout, again, the Old Testament, there's a lot of questions. I'm reading Jeremiah right now. Jeremiah's like, why are these people why are they getting away with all this? How are they wealthy? Right. How are they doing this? Isaiah said the same thing. I read Isaiah before Jeremiah. Like, there's all these questions like, how are the evil prospering? So clearly it's not a sign of if God loves you or not, or if you're doing the right things. There's times that he uses often, almost every time he uses adversity in our lives in order to bring us closer to him.
Yeah.
So that's way above my pay grade. It was above Jeremiah's pay grade. It was above Isaiah's pay grade. It's certainly above my pay grade.
Yeah.
I just know that it's not necessarily because if I have wealth and you don't, I'm somehow walking in God's will and you're not. I know that's not the truth. I do, however, think he doesn't want us to live in poverty. I know that because Jesus speaks against poverty often. He rebukes those that are selfish and not giving to the poor. He's always concerned about the downtrodden. So if he's concerned about the poor and he doesn't want the poor to be poor, then that tells me that that's not his will for our life either. So again, above my pay grade. I'm not a prosperity gospel guy, though. I do think that some people are called into business. Some people are not. Some people have a gift of making money.
Yeah.
Some people don't have that gift. Like I know people that don't have a lot of money that are amazing musicians, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying I have a lot of money, but let's just say I have more. Let's just make it up. Let's say I have more money than them, but I can't play an instrument to save my life.
Yeah.
Right. So does that mean that God doesn't love me because he didn't give me that gift of making, I think he gives us gifts. And I think one of the gifts is the gift of being able to create and manage wealth, which is all his. I gotta I feel like I have to make sure I say these things because people will hear it wrong.
Disclaimer. Yeah.
Which you're a steward of his money. Right.
Right.
And I think that those people unfortunately get put on a pedestal,
right?
And it's simply a talent. And but I do believe that everyone has the ability to maybe not be rich or super wealthy, but everybody has the ability to be, as a David Ramsey would say, like a debt free and a freedom of life and not bound to finances. And everyone has the ability to make good financial decisions that still would allow them to walk out what God has, allow margin in their lives. But whatever it is, like I say Tire Factory because Terry Rexsteiner comes to my mind. Terry, if you're listening, love you, buddy. He's like discipleship. Like he's like the poster child of what it looks like to be a follower of Christ. Him and his buddies. He works at Continental Tire in a tire factory, and he brings more people to the Lord. He witnesses more, right? He disciples more people than almost anyone I know. And it's because he looks at his work as a mission field.
Yeah.
Not just a place to go get a salary. Right. And so I think that's really what it's about. That's really what it's about.
Well, and, prospering, I think, looks different for different people. Like you said, someone's prospering in the gift musically, that maybe you're not prospering in that area of your life. Yeah. But yeah, like that does look different, I would say, for different people. And we are all gifted, but how we steward those things is kind of the point, right? Like that's what we're going to be accountable for, is how we stewarded what God gave us, And so, like you said, if that's, making money is a gift, but so is, music, or so is, how we do anything really. We can do everything that we do to the glory of God, just like Terry, and he is using, whether you are doing, a salary job, whether you're a sub, whether you're, managing wealth. I mean, no matter what it is that you're doing, we can all do those jobs, those things to glorify God and to make an impact in the world around us. Yeah. And being a good steward of those opportunities, that's really what's important there.
Yeah, because you and I both know, let's say dual income family, each person's making $50K a year, right? So they're bringing in 100, let's say 80, I don't care, whatever the number is. We know people that are making that kind of money that are broke. Right. And we know people that have made that kind of money that have actually done quite well in life and are living very comfortably, right? And the world standards would be rich. Like, let's be honest, like if you are living comfortably in America, you are rich, right? Yeah, compared to the world. So a lot of it does, and tough love here, a lot of it comes down to decisions we've made. And what have we done
Absolutely.
with our money? And
Yeah.
even if you're making a dual income of $75,000 to $100,000 a year, it still comes down to what decisions are you willing to delay gratification? Are you willing to invest in the future? Are you willing, so it's easier said than done when you're making large amounts of money. I get that.
Right.
But it still comes down to decisions. We still have to make good decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
So going back to Terry, because I think that was super cool. You were talking about him. He's working in his job and he's leading people to the Lord, making disciples. And that's huge. We all, we have an opportunity each and every day to disciple people. It doesn't have to look one certain way. I think sometimes when
That's right.
people hear discipleship, it's like, okay, that's in ministry. That's for pastors to do or leaders or those ministry folks. And it's really the everyday folks. We all have an opportunity to disciple and to be in ministry essentially every day. So what are your thoughts around that?
oh yeah, I think that's the whole point of ordinary movement.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the ministry side, like ordinary movement, we are saying, if you are ordinary, you are called.
Yeah.
If you are ordinary, God wants to use you.
Mm-hmm.
In Ephesians, it says he gives us pastors and teachers to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say he gives us pastors and teachers and the saints come and watch them do ministry. He
Right.
says he gives them to us so that they can equip us to go do the work of ministry. And the work of ministry is reaching people for Christ, sharing the gospel. It's then once we share the gospel and reach people for Christ, it's walking out discipleship in their lives. So I believe that is the message, right? That I think you're trying to get through is like, if you're in the workforce, if you're in business, it's not one or the other. It's both.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And meaning ministry happens in those places.
Yep.
I have a little different approach. I think we overcomplicate so many things.
Yes.
I mean, I just think we love, as Christians, we love to overcomplicate things.
Yep.
And especially with like workplace ministry, we have like tons of books about it, and we have like leadership podcasts about it. I know you're doing a podcast about it, so this isn't like a cut on you.
It's literally what we're doing right now.
It is, but some of these podcasts will be like series about all these things about you have to do this,
Yeah.
you have to do this, and like all these. I'm here to say that if you want to be a Christian businessman or woman or an employee, and you want to have an impact for the gospel in your workplace, it's about character.
Mm.
It's about being consistent in who you are, which is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
It's about making decisions based on what the Lord would call us to do, not based on what makes us the most money.
Mm-hmm.
It's about treating people fairly. And it's about, and I don't think you can be too covert with it. Don't get me wrong. Like we can't be ashamed of the name of Jesus, right?
Right.
But I don't think it has to be in the face of people.
Right.
There's always a saying, a lot of business people say this. If somebody leaves a message or ends a conversation with "God bless," you're in trouble.
Oh boy.
It just seems like oftentimes the people that are so in your face with it
Yeah.
are the people that will get that almost use it as a way to make you think they're somebody they're not.
Right.
When the people that I most respect that are Christian in business are the people that just walk the walk, talk the talk, and make it known that they're believers.
Right.
And I feel like that's what we have done, Mark and I, in our business. We always had prayer on Wednesday mornings. It wasn't a requirement. It was before the office opened.
Mm-hmm.
We had donuts and coffee, and we would have people come, sometimes the same people, sometimes not. I know for a fact we had people start going to church and got saved because of that. Weren't saved in the workplace, but I think they were saved as a result of that.
Sure.
And it let people in our office know that was a value of ours. And we would constantly on a consistent basis, I would have people randomly come into my office in tears and ask me, how should they handle a situation personally? Now, I never told people I wanted to get in their personal lives.
Right. Right.
But it was always around faith. It was like, can you pray for me? How should I do this? Hey, I've got something going on with my kids. Can you pray for this? And it wasn't because I said, hey, I have a prayer door, come in whenever you want. It was just they knew our stance. And I'm sure Mark had the same. Mm-hmm. And but that can be hard. I've talked to some business people that the hardest part is not non-believers. The hardest part is other believers you do business with. because it's almost like this, this is the hardest part for me. There's almost this thought that because you're a Christian that you should be a doormat, right?
Okay.
If you're a Christian business owner, you can't ever take a hard stance, because if you do, you're not being Christ-like.
Right.
Or you can't have a hard conversation, because the second you have a hard conversation, you're not being Christ-like. Or if you're in a business transaction with another person, could be another believer, and you just take a stance that is different than theirs, oftentimes the hypocrite word, all those things come out.
Right.
And for me, that was probably the hardest part of walking out being a Christian in business. Because I'm like, God has not called me to be a doormat.
Right.
Like, he's not called me to put aside all the principles that I think are valuable in business and life. And when something is I'm a very principled person. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. When somebody owes me something, then they pay it back. Like, those things. So I think that to me is the complex part. The complex part is not how do you walk out discipleship and being a Christian business owner. It's just being a Christian and doing business in an integrous way. And I think if you do that, you will see a popcorn trail of people behind you that you've had an influence on for the gospel.
That's good. That's good. So give me a couple examples. I feel like you did when you were talking about how you have like this simple way of discipling people. It's how you're living out your life. You practically offered prayer on Wednesday mornings. You'd be willing to pray with people. Are there any other like practical ways you would say people who are in business or just working, you don't have to be a business owner. If you're just in the workplace, what are some practical ways that they can disciple?
Well, I don't think you have to be in people's faces with it, but I think you also can't be ashamed of it.
Yep.
And so there's sometimes we use this, and I've used it a lot, covert versus overt, right? There's a covert way of sharing your faith, and there's an overt, overly enthusiastic way. And I think sometimes as believers, we almost will 90% of the time be covert and act like we're just, we're so holy. Like we don't want to be in people's faces, when it's actually, we're being ashamed, if we're to be quite honest with ourselves at times. And so I think covert's good, but I think having a Bible on your desk, reading that Bible occasionally, mentioning like, oh man, that deal worked out amazing. Mark and I prayed for that, and it's amazing how God came through, or man, the blessings of God in our lives, or, those type of things, I think, make it so that people see where you come from. And your words are important. Actions are more important, but your words are so important. Like if you're cursing in the office, if you're blowing up on people, if you're treating people, I always tell my kids, and I believe this, and it's not because I think a janitor's less, it's just a great example. Sure. But I want to treat the janitor as good or better than I treat the banker.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to, I want people to see that in my life. It's like, I respect people. I respect human beings.
Right.
And I think, not that we all don't have our little blow ups at times and things like that, but even if you have a blow up, it's like, you just tell your employees, guys, that was not who I am. I want to be a follower of Christ, and that is not a good example of a follower of Christ. Right. Let them know that you're working towards it. I think if you do things like that, and you can do that as an employee or as an employer, and that's what I mean. I don't think it's like this crazy, like in your face thing, or you have to have tracts out front, or you have to have gospel messages on the wall, or pictures, or if you want, that's fine. I honestly don't. I think you're way better off just being who you are and living that life and letting them see Christ through you.
Well, I think that's really powerful what you mentioned, apologizing. We think, people need to see that Christians mess up. We make mistakes too. There is not a standard. The standard is not perfection. And we are all working this out, on our journey with Christ. And so, like you said, even just admitting like I was wrong on that, or that was not an appropriate way to express myself. I'm still learning, asking for forgiveness. That is radical in our society today, to take ownership and that personal responsibility. But also expressing why, like, that's not the type of life I want to live, who I want to be, what God's called me to, and living your faith authentically. I think it's powerful, and people respect it.
Well, I hope, and there's probably people that may listen to this that have been my employees are like, Well, again, not saying I get it perfect. I'm just saying
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it.
Sure.
And I feel that way about discipleship too. You've heard me say that in a meeting before. It's not
Right.
the next thing you do or what's the book I'm going to do, or it's just like being there for people, walking out life, pointing them to Christ and being selfless in that. Right. I just think, sorry, go ahead.
So, okay. So kind of shifting over to ordinary movement, I've heard you say, maybe not necessarily here, but, when we've talked before, ordinary movement is different than small groups. Discipleship is different than small groups. What do you mean by that? And how is it different? How should it be different?
Yeah. So specifically, I would say it's not a Bible study, right? And I think that's what we think of as small groups. But I would say small groups too. I always felt like, no offense, any pastors listening, I love y'all, all my pastors that I've been under and that I'm still under. I love y'all, and they know that because I try to. That's one thing that I think as business people. I don't care if you're an employee or whatever. You need to invest in. If you're a man, invest in your pastor. If you're a woman, invest in his wife. Like. They need people in their lives they can trust. And so I would think they all know my heart because I spend a lot of time with them. But I always felt kind of that small groups were lacking. It was always based around what time works best for me, what location works best for me. And then it was these random people that time and that location worked. And so it never felt it didn't feel like true camaraderie or relationship. Half the time it wasn't people that I was already spending life with or even that I would just because of periods of, a lot of times when you have kids, it's about the age of your kid or the school they're in and all that stuff. Right.
Yep.
And so then it also, we would come together, but then it had a period of time. And then at the end, it was just like, okay, getting another group. And so I always feel like discipleship is more of an invitation. Jesus always invited people in. He never said, hey, need some disciples. Anybody want to come along? I need 12 of you. First 12, it's going to be this time in this location if that works for you.
Right.
It's not how he did it. He went out and personally invited people into discipleship, into his life. And it wasn't always easy. Like he said, hey, put down your nets and follow me. You're no longer going to fish for fish. You're going to fish for men. Right. So it wasn't even like easy invitation. It was like, hey, do you want to follow me? Come on. Now I know it's a little different. We're not Jesus, but anyhow. So I think the invitation's important. It can be a non-organic group that just happens because of that. But I still think there has to be some aspects. There's some different aspects of ordinary movement. And one of those is this high challenge, high grace. I always say I bring so many things from the business side into ordinary movement. I think that's why God put it on my heart. Right. Many of the cultural values we have, much of what we do, are systems and processes. Like I always say, we need to create systems and processes that are so tight that it eliminates salaries. That's not that we don't want to pay people. It doesn't mean that we don't want employees. It just means there's a book I read once and it said, overhead will kill you. And it normally walks on 2 feet. And that's true. That's true. Like your biggest overhead in almost any organization is your employee base. And then it's usually your facilities. And so I try really hard to create systems and processes that allow us to run smoothly and such. But yeah. So back to the group, high challenge, high grace. Like I felt like in business, like everybody was okay with high challenge. It was like, if you say you're going to be in a meeting, you're going to be in a meeting. If you say you're going to be there on time, you're going to be there on time. If you say you're going to come prepared, you come prepared. If not, then you don't have a job or you're no longer a partner because everybody's like, I don't want to do business with you. So I'm like, well, why don't we act that way in our faith? This is way more important than business. And so this high challenge, high grace piece, this pointing people to this process of becoming disciples and make disciples. And then the big difference is it's not what's next, it's who's next. Like when you complete the process, the question isn't what do I do next? What's the next study? Oh, am I going to do, and this is a great study, by the way, you should probably do it. But I'm not going to do Practicing the Way. I've already gone through this and I'm already ready to disciple someone. So the next thing is who is next. Now, who is next may be that you invite people into this journey of practicing the way, but it's a process of discipling people further. And I think that's lacking in the normal Bible study or small group. And Bible studies, don't get me wrong, understanding the Bible is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in the Word. I try to be in the Word every day, reading commentary in the Word, all those things. But let me tell you, we've got the most gluttonous, information-ridden Christians in our society that we've ever had that are doing nothing with it other than talking to their other Christian buddies about how smart they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's like we got more people training for marathons that never ran a marathon in their life. Like at some point, like when are we going to stop training and actually go run a marathon?
Right.
And so that's the difference. Like OM, like we have, I shouldn't say little patience. Maybe I have little patience. I have little patience for like the person that's been in the Word for 40 years can tell me everything I just said wrong about the Babylonian Empire and the captivity.
Right.
But yet is not discipling anyone or brought anybody to Christ in the 40 years.
Yes.
Like that, I have very little patience for that. I think the sign of maturity in our faith is what we're doing with the Word of God and what He's put on our heart versus how much we know about the Word of God. Because if you're doing, you're going to want to know more anyhow. That just happens.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So that's what I think is different than just a traditional Bible study or a small group.
Hey friends, we're going to interrupt the show just real quick to give a shout out to Ordinary Movement. Ordinary Movement is a disciple-making movement that is helping to equip churches and individuals all over the nation to start discipleship groups. Ordinary Movement is unique in that it has an online resource for you, so you can walk step by step through how to start a group, what to talk about in your group, and how to be a disciple who truly makes disciples. These high challenge, high grace environments are perfect for anyone. You don't have to have any previous experience. No matter what background you come from, no matter what profession you're in, you can be a disciple who makes disciples. Check out ordinarymovement.com for more information and to get started. Now back to the show. Well, thank you for sharing. I know you have some more thoughts that you want to share on the business side of things. So Jeremy, tell me what's on your mind today.
Well, I mean, as we talked about this, the book that came to my head, and I have not looked at this book in, I think, probably 10 years. The book was written in 2010, but it's called Thou Shalt Prosper by Daniel Lappin.
Oh my gosh, when we were talking earlier, that's the book that came to mind. So that's perfect.
Oh, really?
Perfect. Yes.
Well, you know the book.
Well, I've heard of it. Yes, that book.
It's incredible.
That title. Okay.
It's incredible. Okay. So it's written by Rabbi Daniel Lappin. So he's a rabbi. Okay. So it's a Jewish rabbi, but it's written for Christian people. Mm-hmm. And the premise of the book is helping Christians or non-Christians, just Americans in a Christian society, right? People would argue that, but we do have a Christian society. Right. To understand, like, why are Jewish people far and above more wealthy and more successful in money than anyone else in the world? Like, it's not by accident, more or less.
Right.
What's interesting about that is the Jewish faith is our Old Testament, right?
Right.
So like, and the other thing that came to mind the other day, it's crazy. I should have got his name. It would have been great to do a podcast with him. But I sat next to a guy at dinner. We were at a sushi bar, and next to me was this Jewish guy. And I mean, he had a strong Jewish accent, and he's mentioned to the waiter that he was going back to Israel next week.
Wow.
So, you know me, I'm like, hey, go back to Israel. Tell me about that. And so we start talking it up, and super successful, crazy wealth. And I'm like, so now I'm talking about this now. And I was like, man, that would have been a great guy to have on the podcast. But nonetheless, really cool. And just, I left that, that's where I was going. I left that conversation. You know what I thought to myself? We actually, this is crazy. This won't blow anybody else's mind. This is how midget minded I am. But I'm like, I actually believe in the same God as him.
Right.
The difference is he does not, and this is a huge difference. Don't get me wrong. This is all the difference.
Right.
But ultimately, like God the Father, we're the same. Like we believe in God the Father. He just doesn't believe Jesus Christ came, which is a huge deal. Yeah. But that's how like close but yet far we are from the Jewish faith. So anyhow, I say that because I think it is extremely relevant because most of this book is around the Old Testament, right, and the practice. Okay. But the big thing that I think is so important, and that I would love to make Christian people understand that are in business, or Christian people that are wealthy or that want to gain wealth, is that business is not bad. Capitalism is not bad.
Right.
Money is not bad. Now, the love of money is the root of all evil. The accumulation of money for our own good is bad, and we can go into a whole podcast about that. But the idea is that money, or let's talk about business, is not bad. And so I had some notes here. This is crazy to think about this, and this is in 2010. So it could be different now. It may be even more compelling now. That Jews constitute 2% of the U.S. population, right? So that means on the Forbes 400 list, there should be 8 Jews. Okay. But there are, sorry, I have notes, at any given time between 60 and 100, depending on the year.
Wow. Okay.
So do that percent, right? There should be, based on percent, there should be 8.
Right.
On any given year, there's between 60 and 100. So that's astronomical.
Yeah.
Jewish households with income greater than 75,000 a year. This is back in 2010, so I'm sure it's a much different number now. Jewish households with income greater than 75,000 a year is double that of non-Jewish households.
Wow.
So there's something there, and it's about mindset. And I'm all about mindset more than I am somebody giving me the steps, because give me the mindset and I can kind of figure out the steps, right?
Yep.
And so the idea is that they believe, Jewish people in general, and I believe that we should as well, that the occupation of business is moral, noble, and even divine.
Yes.
Right? And so the problem is we have been so taught in America that business is bad. There's actually a big push, and I'll say by the left, because I don't think it's the only way I know. I'm not really a political person. I'm not telling you how to vote or anything else.
Right.
But it's like that capitalism's bad, that business is bad. Let's make them out to be terrible people. Anybody that they're out to like make us work and at their expense, and look at them, they're rich and there's some of that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you have to do, in order for business to be moral and noble and worthy, it has to be done in a moral, noble, and worthy way.
Yes.
Right. So I
Absolutely.
get that. But I think what's happened is it's got into our psyche, and it's got into the mind of business people, and they start feeling like what they're doing every day is not a noble thing.
Right.
Is not a divine thing, is not actually good. And that's what I wanted. I just wanted to hit on that. And maybe it's all one podcast, maybe it's 2. It doesn't matter. But I because it's a big deal to me. Because I talk to so many Christian business people that I feel like are almost ashamed that they're being that what they're doing, or they're successful.
Right.
And I think it's important to understand. So this came up in our business meeting. We were talking about what's it called? The Tzedakah, I think it's called. I have it pulled up here, which is the 8 levels of charitable giving, according to the Jewish faith. It's called you spell it Tzedakah. I think it's called the Tzedakah. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to go through these. They're pretty fascinating.
Please, let's hear them.
Cool. So I'm going to go from lowest level of giving to the highest level of giving. Okay. So the lowest level, number 8, is when donations are given grudgingly, right? That makes sense.
Yep.
The next one, number 7, is when one gives less than he should, or he or she should, but does it cheerfully. So you give less, but you do it with a cheerful heart. Number 6 is when one gives directly to the poor upon being asked. Number 5 is when one gives directly to the poor without being asked. So you can see this, you see how it's changing, right?
Sure.
Number 4 is donations when the recipient is aware of the donor's identity, but the donor still doesn't know the specific identity of the recipient. Okay, that makes sense. Number 3 is donation when the donor is aware to whom the charity is being given, but the recipient is unaware of the source. So it's getting a little more anonymous. You see that. Yep. Number 2 is giving assistance in such a way that the giver and recipient are unknown to each other. Communal funds administered by responsible people are also in this category. So true autonomy, like nobody knows who's giving it. It's like, we're just giving it because we want to help. But here's the interesting one. And I would like to, this to me blows my mind. And it shows how divine and good business and capitalism can be. It's the highest form of charity is to help sustain a person before they become impoverished by offering a substantial gift in a dignified manner, or by extending a suitable loan or by helping them find employment or establishing themselves in business so as to make it unnecessary for them to become dependent on others.
Wow.
So what if we as Christian business owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if we all looked at what we were doing as the highest form of giving? What
Yeah.
if we all looked at what we were doing as honestly, like we're doing it? No, very few. If I had 10 businessmen and 10 businessmen and women in this room with us, in our rooms right now, and I asked them, "Hey, how are you giving back in your business?"
Mm-hmm.
I bet 10 of them would not say I provide jobs for people.
I bet you're right. Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
But the reality is, think about yourself, Kelly. Think about, if you were, I'll just take it way down so it makes more sense. You're a single mom, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're struggling. You need a car really bad. You can't make rent. And so
Right.
I come along and I'm like, Kelly, I'd like to buy you a car. Or maybe, no, let's say I do a different, let's say I just anonymously give you a car, somebody, all that,
Yeah.
right? So I do the level 2 giving.
Mm-hmm.
And I solve your problem for a brief period of time. I
Right.
give you a car and then I give you $5,000, get you on your feet. You can pay rent for a while and pay for food.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 months from now, you have a car. Maybe it helps you get a job, but you're kind of back where you were other than you have transportation. And maybe you can't pay for your insurance and maybe you can't pay for your gas.
Yep.
Maybe it breaks down. What are you going to do?
Right.
Okay. Versus what if it's, oh, here's a single mom, Kelly. She's a pretty dynamic woman. I'm going to, you know what? I can provide a job for her. And I would give her probably the equivalent of $30,000 this year anyhow, between the car and the help. So I'm going to create a job and I'm going to pay her, but she may cost me a little bit, but she should, if she's good at what she does, she'll actually make me money in the process.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But now you go home to your kids and it's like, oh, mom's got a job. Mm-hmm. Oh, mom, now you have the self-respect of buying your own car. Now you have the self-respect of paying your own rent. Now your kids see mom's getting up early every day and going to work. She's putting on nice clothes. She's presentable. She's coming home. All those things, right?
Right.
Do you see the difference in self-respect that you would have?
For sure. For sure.
And the difference in the actual help that makes for a person versus just solving a problem in the moment?
Yeah. Well, it's sustainable long term.
Right.
Like you said, if you have a truck, a car, and you can't make those monthly payments, or you can't make the insurance, or then you're just up a creek again. You're gonna have to sell that truck or that car to make get money. So it's a sustainable way to support and give and be generous to someone. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that to me, when I read this book, was a huge encouragement because there's an example of it in this book, but I don't remember what year it is, but I think it was Time Magazine or something, or People Magazine came out with like the greatest love stories of 2010, let's say, whatever. I make up the year, right? And again, I'm not a people guy. I don't even remember the names, but it was some famous people back then. And it was the top 5 love stories, or top 10 people, I think, that they were together. So it's 5 love stories. And everybody was celebrating these people, how great they were. I think one was John Wayne or something like that back then. But anyhow, celebrating these people, how great they were. And then the very next day, another, let's call it Time Magazine. I saw the other People Magazine. Time Magazine came out with a front page article, the front page of their magazine. It was how corporate greed, how bad corporate greed was, and how corporations were stealing from people and this and that. And now there could have been some truth in it. I'm not saying that corporations are great all the time, but there could have been some truth in it. But the crazy thing is, I actually want to read this. Let me see. Let me find this because it's kind of pointed and it's great coming from somebody other than me. 1 second. 1 second. Where is it? Oh, gosh. Where's that at? Well, I can't find it now. Maybe I didn't write it down. Well, the reality is what happened was all of these people, all 5 of those relationships, they were outside of marriage, right? All of them all of them were, 3 of them still weren't divorced, and they were in love with someone else, and they were celebrating this love that these people had, right?
Okay. Yep.
One of them had a wife with 3 kids at home. So that wife with 3 kids at home is reading this article about how great her husband's love is for this other woman, and they're not even
Right.
divorced yet, right?
Wow. Yep.
It was never mentioned in the article. It was just how great it was. So the
Wow.
point Daniel Appin makes was, when it comes to pursuit of our sexuality, and this is in 2010, imagine 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When it comes to pursuit of our sexuality and freedom in our sexuality, everything is okay. There's no judgment, right?
Right.
But in pursuit of creating money or pursuit of creating jobs, there's tons of conviction and pointing fingers, right? And so what my point in all that is we have been brainwashed to believe as business owners and business people that what we do is bad, that making money is not good,
Right.
that by making money we are taking advantage of people. Where at the same time, I can cheat on my wife, I can marry somebody, I can transition, I can do whatever I want, right? But if it's in the pursuit of sexuality, it's all okay. Nobody thinks
And celebrated. Yeah.
Celebrated.
Right.
Celebrated, right?
Right.
And so I think it's important that we kind of take back that thought of, as long as we are doing business in a moral, integrous way,
Sure.
we should be proud of what we're doing. And if you are a business owner, you should be proud of the jobs that you create, right? There's an example here of Starbucks. I love this example. It's page 53. Let me pull this up really fast here. I actually did some work beforehand, and now I can't find any of the work I did. So this is a pet peeve of mine. It's a pet peeve because I can't really bring it up because it's such a long conversation. But when business people are like, we're giving back, they say all the ways they gave back. So, okay, I own this business, but I'm giving back. When I want to shake those people and say, no, you own a business, you are giving back. By having a business, you are giving back. What you're doing is a great thing.
Yes.
And it's often been said that if you are making money in a business, getting a salary or a commission, that is a direct reflection of the amount of good you're doing for people in society. It has to be. I mean, you don't get paid unless you're providing something that somebody needs.
Right.
And so, like Starbucks, he uses this example. I don't know if they still have this. Again, this is back in 2010, but they had a pamphlet entitled "Giving Back" when you came into their store.
Okay.
And they said of all the ways that they gave back, like its employees put many hours of volunteer time, yada yada. Each Starbucks chooses a charity to receive leftover pastries. Starbucks Corporation contributes focus on literacy, AIDS, outreach. They have a green team, so they're helping. We see that everywhere. We're helping nature.
Yes.
Coffee origin countries, we see that in Starbucks. And it's good that they're doing that. Okay. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. But the idea is that Starbucks has to defend themselves to say, oh, we're giving back. Don't worry. We're a good organization. When the reality is every day that I go to Starbucks, they give me something. They're providing an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
They provide a place for people to do work. They will never tell you, Kelly, that you have to leave. In fact, maybe they will, but I've never heard that, right? They provide an opportunity for you to come in if you're a patron. I don't even know if you have to be a patron, but where people can create community, right? There's people that meet there. There's small groups that meet there. We used to have an OM group meet at a Starbucks.
Yep.
People do business there. Some people, that's their office, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember spending a lot of hours there as a college student. You're doing the work all day. Yep.
Yeah, and then boil it down to the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that they employ, right?
Yes.
That are giving, like we talked about, giving self-dignity. I mean, that is huge. What does that do for the economy? And then let's even take it further and say, what if you're a retired person? What if you're like me that's trying to create passive income? If I can invest in their stock and now my investment goes up, they just created great value. They gave me something that I could never do, right? I mean, the opportunity to create this passive income that I could never do. It gives me time to do the things that I want to do. So the point is, I know I'm talking a lot here, but I think as Christian business people, we have to get past this notion that somehow we're bad and somehow that what we do is not good and that we're just greedy people that want money. Now, what we do with the money is really important, and how we treat people in the process is really important. But I would love for people, I would love for someone listening to this to have a shift in their brain and realize that what they do every day has a lot of morality and has a lot of value beyond just making money.
Yeah. I think that'll free some people up, because I think you're right, especially in our political climate. And, there's a lot going on in the world right now. And I think that I could certainly see that being a message that, business owners feel. So hopefully that does free somebody up today, Jeremy. That's very good.
Well, I would read the book, Thou Shalt Prosper by Daniel Lappin. It is amazing. I mean, I could talk for 10 hours on that book. It's so great. So great.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, any parting words of wisdom for our business owning friends or folks that are trying to integrate the two, business and discipleship?
I don't know. Do you want me to get going again?
You got a little spicy there at the end, Jeremy.
I mean, I'm a passionate person. That's probably the one thing I have going for me is my passion.
It's the one thing.
It may be a bad thing at times too, but I am passionate. I would maybe just close with saying, first off, I'd love to do more of these with you.
Yeah, for sure.
I almost feel like I would like to do a podcast just on business. I mean, it's just, there's so many principles, there's so many things around money. I mean, gosh, I feel like I could talk too long. But I would just warn people, and you asked questions around it earlier. They were great questions. Is don't kid yourself around money.
Yeah, explain that.
Yeah, so I mean, this could sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I'm really not. I'm saying that business can be divine and is, and creating jobs is the highest form of giving according to the Jewish faith. And I actually believe in my own life, like, yeah, man, that's probably the best thing I can do for someone, is as long as you're doing it in a way that you're respecting them and giving them a great job. And the services that you provide, if you're getting paid, you're doing something for society. There was here I go on a tangent, but part of this book, he starts with saying, one of his rabbi friends said, it's amazing. As business people, we need to have a really strong understanding of the value of people in our lives.
Yeah.
And those around us. And don't be close-handed, be open-handed, be a giver's gain person. Give, like don't be so tight. And what he said was how amazing it was that he could go get a loaf of bread, right? He can just go get a loaf of bread.
Yep.
When there was a time when somebody would have had to have grown the wheat, like that means you had to till the field and you had to sow the seeds, and then you had to wait for it to grow and hope that the weather was right. And then you had to cut the grain, then you had to thresh the grain, then you had to turn it into flour, and then from flour you had to so let's just say all that. Let's just say you could buy flour, but then you had to take even if you were in a society you could buy flour, then you had to buy flour, then you had to knead the dough and put the yeast in, all those things, right? Just to get a loaf of bread. But people make society, and this is where businesses are. This goes back to the whole business thing. Like if you have a business that's baking bread, it's not just baking bread. You're making it so that Kelly and I can go get a loaf of bread. Like we don't have to buy flour and make our own bread. And so, but we need to realize, like, the society we live in it works because so many people are doing jobs and doing things with excellence, that I can go get my coffee. I can go get my bread. I can go get my car washed.
Yep. That
may not seem like a big, I like having a car that's washed, right?
Yes.
So like, it's like whatever that is, you're providing something for someone. So don't underestimate it, but also don't underestimate what you're doing if you're in that business, but also don't underestimate what you have because of people that are working hard in business and what they're providing. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, don't kid yourself around money. Sometimes we say to ourselves, man, I'm working really hard because I'm providing opportunities as a job, let's say, right? Because we just said it's a great thing. But it's not a great thing if you're not pursuing the Lord yourself. It's not a great thing. It is. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, but personally, it's not a great thing personally if you're not pursuing the Lord. It's not a great thing personally if you're being stingy with the money you make.
Right.
If your goal to make money isn't to say, this isn't just mine. Sure, I can live comfortably and I can do nice things with it, but what does the Lord want me to do with it? That should be our motivation. Right. It's not so that we can be the richest guy in the world. It's like, what can we do with it? How can we help people with it other than just the jobs we create?
Right.
And otherwise, you're gonna wake up 20 years from now and you're gonna realize that you're actually full of greed, that you're actually putting all your trust in your money, that you have stiff-armed God because you don't need him. Because if you have all the money, then they always say if you have enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. You heard that?
Yeah.
So if we create enough wealth that we can solve our problems, now we kind of become our own gods, right? Sure. And so that's my biggest warning is like pursue business, pursue creating wealth, all those things, but don't pursue it for yourself. Yeah. And don't do it at the expense of your family. Don't do it at the expense of God.
Yep.
And yeah, just keep your heart right. You have to guard your heart every day. If you are in business and if you're around money, I mean, Jesus says it is really hard to enter the kingdom of heaven if you're a rich person. And I think that's because we can create an environment where we don't have to have a lot of trust in God because we can solve a lot of our problems without having to trust him. And we think, yes. And that's a scary, scary place. So I would just say, guard your heart, your heart, take assessment all the time, daily, weekly. And don't fool yourself. You will lie to yourself. You will fool yourself. Trust me, you will lie to yourself more than anyone will lie to you when it comes to money. Yeah.
I think of that verse. You can gain the whole world, but if you lose your soul or if you lose your family, what good is it? You'll have missed out at the end of the day.
The world, yet loses the soul. Matthew. Yep. Yeah. It's a great, great, great verse. It's so true. And so, this was fun. I don't get to talk business much or philosophy around business. So
yes,
this was so fun. I probably talked too much. I'm sorry, Kelly.
It's okay. All right. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me today on Discipleship in the Marketplace. Enjoyed our conversation. Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it often. That was
All right. Friends, if you like this, don't forget to stick around and check out some of our other videos and podcasts on the YouTube page. And then I will see you for the next great conversation. Have a good one.